Hi, it's Penny. So today I wanted to talk about all the books that I read in March. Now, I have already done wrap-ups of the different readathons and just some of the books that I did during the month, so I'm not going to go into heaps of detail because I read 18 books this month, and if I go into heaps of detail, we will be here for the rest of our lives. So I will just leave links down below. If you want more detail, you can go there and find it. So I'm going to start with the lowest rated and move my way through to the highest rated. And sadly, this month, I had 2 1-stars, which is bizarre because I hardly ever have 1-stars. Last year, for the whole year, I had 4 1-stars, and the year before that, I think I only had 2. So it's rare, but this month. So the worst of the 2 was Elysium by Jennifer Marie Brissett. This is kind of a hard story to tell you what it's about, and that's why it got such a low rating. To some degree, it is a story about an apocalyptic future where humans are now just being remembered by this computer. And the computer is telling their stories, but all the stories have the same characters, or at least characters with the same names, but with different relationships. It's quite strange and quite terrible. The other one was Slam by Nick Hornby. This is a book about this shitty teenage boy who pretends to talk to his giant Tony Hawk poster, but that's not really what the story is about at all. I guess the actual story is spoilers, but I'll tell you, it's a book about teen pregnancy, but the main character doesn't learn anything. It's pretty bad. Then let's talk about the 2 stars. I read 4 2-stars, and we'll talk about the most controversial one first, and that is A Court of Thorns and Roses. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling with our main character Feyre playing the Beauty, and then the Beast role is filled by a Fey male. Feyre kills a Fey while he's in wolf form and then has to go and stay with this Fey High Lord. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, so romance. Which, if you know me, I don't really like romance, so that's probably why I gave it a 2-star. The next 2-star is Men Explain Things to Me and Other Essays by Rebecca Solnit. So this is a book of feminist essays. One of them is about mansplaining, the other ones are about other things. I didn't think there were a few good bits and pieces throughout this book, but overall it was a bit annoying. And I think other people have explained a lot of these points better. And the next 2-star was Aeronaut's Windlass by Jim Butcher. This is a steampunk fantasy that is the first book in a new series, although none of the rest of the books have been put out yet, probably because it's so long that it would take forever to write. But it also took forever to read because it just goes on and not much happens. But I'm not going to get too much into that. If you want to know more detail, of course, down below. So this is set in a world where people no longer live on the ground. Instead, they live in these spires, and they get between the spires in these airships that are powered by magic crystals. My absolute favorite part of the book was the cats. There are talking cats, although the cats talk cat. They don't speak human because, to be honest, they think humans are well beneath them, and can you really... why would you speak the language of a creature so unintelligent? So I really loved the cats and their disdain for humanity. But the rest of the story was just a bunch of different characters coming together at the beginning of this war that's going to happen between 2 spires. It was much, much longer than it needed to be, which is why it got 2 stars. Then the last 2-star one that I read was What Becomes of the Brokenhearted by Ellen Duff. So this is the sequel to Once Were Warriors, which I gave 3 stars. Both of these books are set in this Maori community that is in poverty. This one primarily follows a family and them dealing with domestic abuse and alcoholism and suicide and just lots of horrible stuff. Also, there's gang memberships, a lot of gang fighting in both of these books. This one is a little bit more about the father's redemption after he gets kicked out of the house from the events of the first book, but there wasn't enough redemption in it, and the writing is awful, which is why this one got 2 stars. This one, the writing was also awful, but the message was important enough that it bumped it up to a 3-star. The first one I have here is The Forgetting by Sharon Cameron. This is a story of a town where every 12 years everyone forgets everything, so they carry around these little books and they have to write down everything about their lives so that when they wake up again, they'll know who they are and who their family is and what's going on. But it also opens up the door for people to be quite corrupt and change things at that point. And also our main character, for some reason, still remembers things. So for all of these 3-star ones, I did enjoy them. I just thought wasn't anything amazing, and that was the case for The Forgetting. So the next 3-star I listened to was Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb, which is the 3rd book in the Farseer trilogy, where we follow Fitz, who is the king-in-waiting's bastard son in this kingdom where royalty often has the skill, where they're able to read people's minds and put thoughts in people's minds, but they're also being attacked by these red raiders who are forging some of their people, and they're really struggling to keep the duchy together. Fitz ends up being trained as an assassin, and his journey throughout the trilogy is amazing. Unfortunately, this last book just was a lot of mucking around, and so even though the end was amazing, it just took too long to get there, and so it couldn't get above a 3. Then I think the rest of the 3 stars were probably 3.5s, but not quite 4s. So the first one was What Happened That Night by Sandra Block. This is quite a heavy thriller story about a girl who is gang raped, and then a year later a video is put up on the internet that shows the rape, and she decides she's going to get revenge on the people that were involved. This was a very heavy book, but at the same time there was a romance that lightened it up. Unfortunately, the whole revenge thing was very unrealistic, so it was a bit difficult to believe. And the last 3-star audiobook was We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. This is a really dark and creepy book, and I keep considering giving it 4 stars actually. But I think when I was listening to it, I didn't quite enjoy it as much because it does take quite a long time to figure out what's going on. So I think that's why I gave it 3 stars. But in retrospect, I keep thinking about it, so maybe it does deserve the 4 stars. It's also really hard for me to tell you what this is about because the whole point of this book, the first half, is figuring out what's going on. But we are following this girl named Mary Cat. She is down in the village shopping, and nobody really seems to like her, even though she just seems like a nice, ordinary girl. I loved how dark and creepy it was, and I definitely recommend the audiobook. In the last 3-star I read in physical form, and that is Dry by Neal Schusterman and Jarrod Schusterman. So this is a story about a town having a drought, and suddenly there is no water. Things go downhill very quickly, and we're following some teens as they get themselves into a very extreme situation. I thought it was a really interesting situation, but unfortunately I didn't particularly like the characters. Then 4 stars, we're getting into the ones that I really liked. Let's talk about the audiobook first. So that was The Apocalypse of Elena Mendoza by Sean David Hutchinson. This is a story about Elena Mendoza, who was the product of a virgin birth. She's always heard voices or had inanimate objects talking to her, and now she's discovered that she can heal people, and these voices are trying to tell her what she should do with that power. It's quite a strange story, but I thought it was really well told. Then the 4-star graphic novel I read was The Steel Prince by V. Schwab. This is part of the Shades of Magic series. When I try to be objective, I'm not entirely sure this deserves 4 stars, but my heart wants to give it 4 stars just because I love this world so much. We follow this prince who's been sent to this port town that has quite a lot of criminal activity in the hopes that he will grow up and learn some responsibility. And he comes across the pirate queen and some stuff happens, but not really that much. I think this just so short, there's not much space for much to happen, and so maybe I gave it 4 stars, like in the hope that once some more comes out it will become a 4-star, a hopeful 4 stars. Then the last 2 4 stars I already returned to the library so I don't have them here. The first one is In an Absent Dream by Seanan McGuire. So this is the 4th book in the Wayward children's series. So the Wayward children's series is about this halfway home for children who at some point have found a door, gone through it and found a magical land, really loved that magical land, then have been forced to come back to reality and live in our shitty normal world. So this story actually follows Lundy, who runs the halfway home, and tells her origin story, I guess, of the door that she found going through to the goblin market. I thought the goblin market was an absolutely magical world, although it does have its darker elements. And I always like those darker elements. And I also read Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor, which is the sequel to Strange the Dreamer. In Strange the Dreamer, we follow Laszlo, who is a librarian who's always been obsessed with the city of Weep. Now, Weep used to be called something else, but at some point, suddenly everybody forgot the name of this place and no longer remembers where it is or anything about it until some people come out of Weep asking for help with a problem that they're having. So the second book just continues to unravel that world, and it is such a beautiful story. I did give Strange the Dreamer 5 stars, but unfortunately I didn't think that the writing was quite as beautiful as the first book, and I thought the pace was a lot slower. Even though I absolutely loved the story and all the new characters and so many things about this, I didn't feel like I could give it 5 stars. But I did give 2 books 5 stars. The first one is Big Little Lies by Leanne Moriarty. So this book had the highest rating on my physical TBR list, and I'm not surprised. We follow a group of mothers who all have children who go to the same kindergarten, and right at the beginning of the book, we're told that at this event in the future, somebody is going to die. And so we're following these women's different lives and the issues they're having both with their husbands and their children, knowing that we lead up to something that happens in the end. So you're always trying to guess who it is that's going to die. And the end was so satisfying. I loved all the mothers, and I thought that their stories were told really well. So then the other 5-star, I did already return to the library, but I need to get my own copy, and that is Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. Now, I love Brandon Sanderson, so it's not a surprise that I loved this, but this is, I think, his first foray into YA science fiction. And we follow this girl named Spencer who lives on this planet where humans have escaped this alien race that they're at war with, but now they're trapped on the planet. They can't go to the surface, and they're really only protected because there's all this debris in the atmosphere of this world that shields them. Now, Spencer wants to be a pilot and help protect her people, but unfortunately her father was also a pilot, but at some point in the middle of a big battle, he ran away and has been labeled a coward, and so that reputation is making it hard for her to be allowed to do what she wants to do. So that's the 18 books I read. It's a lot of books, and I was really happy about it. But I also want to just give a quick update about my physical TBR, since that's my main goal at the moment, is to try to get that list down to a much smaller number. Ideally, I think I'd like it to be about 20, but at the moment it's a lot more than that. So I did think at the start of the month I had 100 books on my physical TBR. However, the maths doesn't work, and so the only thing I can think is that it was 102 books. I don't know why I'm so bad at maths. I used to be good at it. I really did. But let's say I had 102 books. Now, of the 18 books I read, actually only 7 of those were off my physical TBR, but still, that's 7 books. Good progress. I did also buy 2 books that got added to that list, so it puts me up to. And then I was trying to do the thing where you try to take off 8 every month. So if I didn't read 8, I would then have to unhaul books to make it 8. So like since I read 7, I would have to unhaul 1 book. But I'm just too impatient for that. So I actually went through and found all the books on my shelves that I don't particularly want to read. And I found 15 books that I just want to get rid of. Like, I'm happy if I don't read them. So once you take all those into account, my physical TBR is now 82 books. And that's 20 less than I started. So good work, me. I do realize that now that I've unhauled all the ones I don't want to read, it's going to get a lot harder to get it down in the future. But you know what? That's future me's problem. And we're not going to worry about it. So if you have read any of the books that I talked about today, I would love to talk with you about them down in the comments. Let me know what you thought of them. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a really great day, and I will see you next time.